The North Korean government rejected cheerleader candidates for one reason: you'd never expect foot odor. At 15, Lee Seon-hwa passed that test and spent the next 20 years learning that in North Korea, every part of you belongs to the state. Your smile, your body, your joy. She was the woman behind the perfect performances. So where is she now? Her story starts now. If it moves you, subscribe, hit like, and drop a comment telling us where in the world you're watching from. February 2026, Milan, Italy. I was sitting on the living room couch staring at the television. The opening ceremony of the Milan Winter Olympics was in full swing. Colorful lights. Athletes from every nation marching in. The announcer talking a mile a minute in that excited voice they always have. I was watching it all in a kind of daze until the Korean delegation stepped into the arena. My spine straightened on its own. Cheerleaders burst out ahead of the flag. Red, white, and blue uniforms. Bright, open smiles. Nobody had told them to smile like that. There was no camera pressure in those faces. Just pure joy spilling out because they couldn't hold it in. Something warm flooded my chest. Then the tears came. My daughter Minji, sitting next to me, grabbed my hand in a panic. "Mom, why are you crying?" No words came out. They wouldn't. Across the couch, Young Kyung was peeling a tangerine. She looked up at the screen and said quietly, "Hey, those are the kids you trained." That broke me completely. The three of us sat there in front of the TV and sobbed, forgot all about the tangerines. Later, Minji wiped her eyes and laughed a little. "Why does our family always cry during the Olympics?" That made me laugh too, laughing and crying at the same time. I'd learned what that felt like before, but that night taught me all over again. I need to tell you something. I was never supposed to be in that room. Never supposed to sit on a couch in South Korea and cry freely over a television screen. 20 years ago, I was in Pyongyang. To tell this story right, I have to go back much further. I grew up at the Mangyongdae Art School in Pyongyang. People said the walk to school, there was the most beautiful commute in the entire city. I still remember the sound of the river on the way to class, willows trailing into the water in spring, the river freezing solid in winter, kids riding sleds on the ice. Looking back, the scenery alone was something worth keeping. My father was a party official. My mother taught dance. Ours was a family the system had chosen to favor. If you know anything about North Korea, you know what that means. Your family status determines your worth. Because of that, our food rations ran a little higher than most. We had an apartment in the city. I grew up thinking that was simply how things were. I'd been taught it meant we were doing well. I was 15 when I was first selected as a cheerleader candidate. I was tall and could do both dance and gymnastics. But there were other criteria, some of them hard to say without laughing now. One was no foot odor. During performances, you sometimes had to remove your shoes, and they couldn't afford the embarrassment. Looking back, it's almost funny. But at the time, we fought tooth and nail to pass every single standard. We believed it was an honor. On selection day, the examiner lined us up and had us raise our feet. The girl in front of me didn't get cut for foot odor. She wet herself from nerves. I watched her walk out crying and told myself, never show what you feel. Don't crack. That was my first lesson in the cheerleading corps, where I first learned to bury my emotions. By 20, I was a full member. By 35, I had risen to female team director. The day I first wore the director's armband, I called my mother to tell her. Her first words, "Isn't that heavy?" Not congratulations. Not a word of pride. Just that. It stung at the time. But now I understand she was worried. The higher you climb, the heavier the fall. Back then, the four of us were always together. Me Lee Seon-hwa, Park Young-kyung, first violin, Choi Sun-hee, our youngest dancer, and Kim Myung-chil, our sound director. Young-kyung's violin case was so enormous it knocked people's shoulders in every ration. Line, she was always getting pushed to the back. She complained constantly, "My violin eats better than I do." Sun-hee would cry her eyes out during practice, then flash a brave smile the moment she saw me coming. Myung-chul always looked stone-faced, but he was the first one to show up with food. Then one day, Kim Jong-un came to the performance hall. He was still receiving air training at the time. When the show ended, he walked up to me and extended his hand. "Good work." Just that. 2 words. The officials around us held their breath. I bowed and took his hand. It was cold. Unusually, strangely cold. I believed that handshake was the greatest honor of my life. What that coldness meant, I didn't know yet. It was the summer of 2003, when the orders came down to send a delegation to the Daegu Summer Universiada. It was my first trip south as team director. The night before we left Pyongyang, Our political supervisor gathered everyone together. His voice was low and flat. Everything you see and hear in South Korea is enemy propaganda. Do not trust what your eyes tell you. They are trying to confuse you. Is that understood? We answered in unison, understood. I carved those words into my chest and boarded the plane. The truth is I was excited, even though I knew I shouldn't be. Leaving Pyongyang was rare enough. Setting foot south of the border? I couldn't help being curious. Of course, no one said that out loud. Showing that kind of feeling was dangerous. We stepped off the plane and onto the bus. No one sat at the window. The monitors claimed those seats for themselves and pushed us to the inside. Yoon-kyung sat next to me. Her violin case balanced on her knees, eyes forward. I kept mine forward too, and stole glances out the window. The bus pulled onto the highway toward Daegu. Something was wrong with the world outside. The road was enormous. No comparison to anything in Pyongyang. More lanes than I could count, traffic flowing like a river, smooth and unbroken. On both sides, clean manicured greenery. Giant signs posted at intervals. Korean letters, same alphabet as ours, but somehow they felt foreign. Why did they look so strange? I kept saying it to myself, enemy propaganda. It's fake. This is designed to throw us off. But it was an awfully long stretch of fake. It never ended. That road was wider than anything I'd ever seen in Pyongyang. It didn't look like a set. Not even close. The bus slowed. A rest stop. We weren't allowed off the bus. Brief stop. Stay in your seats. We could only look through the glass. But what was on the other side of that glass in 29 years of living, nothing had prepared me for it. Under lights brighter than any fluorescent bulb, food stretched out in every direction. Spicy rice cakes, blood sausage, fried snacks, mixed rice bowls, noodles, rice rolls. The variety alone was uncountable. Back home, you'd see food like that on a holiday table, maybe. Here it was just displayed. Casually, at a roadside stop. People drifted past and helped themselves. Some waited in line. Some stood alone eating while looking at their phones. A young mother pointed things out to her child. College kids ate noodles with their arms around each other's shoulders. An old man sat alone on a bench with a cup of coffee. That old man stayed with me. Nobody beside him. Just sitting there, drinking his coffee, face completely at ease. No worry anywhere on it. He wasn't watching for anyone. He had no idea anyone might be watching him. I had never seen a face like that in my life. Eun-kyung leaned close and whispered, "Seonhwa, are they actually selling all of this?" No answer from me. The monitor was right there. I looked straight ahead and kept my face blank. 2 decades of training, my expression didn't flinch. But then I saw the smiles. That hit harder than anything else. The food fine, call it propaganda. But those smiles, no one had rehearsed those. I knew. I'd spent years rehearsing smiles, hours in front of a mirror training my face when to open up and when to pull back. I could spot practiced warmth from across a room. Those people weren't performing. That was life easy enough that joy just leaked out on its own. For the first time, something broke loose in my mind. We were taught we live better than anyone. So why are these people eating like this? Why do their faces look like that? The bottom dropped out of my stomach. But my expression didn't move. I pulled my eyes from the window and folded my hands on my lap. One slow breath. Then I stared forward like I hadn't seen a thing. The bus started moving again. Eun-kyung rested her hand on mine gently without a word. I didn't say anything either. We didn't have to. The images wouldn't leave me on the way back to Pyongyang. I'd close my eyes and those lights came back. Those relaxed, unguarded faces. I pushed them down. Enemy propaganda. Fake. Designed to confuse us. I kept telling myself. But fake things don't linger like that. We landed at Sunan Airport in late summer 2003. The moment my feet hit the tarmac, they felt heavy. Coming home to Pyongyang was supposed to be a relief. Not that day. The terminal came into view. The checkpoint officers in their military uniforms. The portraits of the great leader on the wall. All of it familiar and yet somehow strange. Only 10 days away. But something had shifted. What had shifted was my eyes. The next day, we were called into a state security interrogation room. We had to account for everything we'd seen and heard and felt during our time in the South. 1 desk, 2 chairs. That was the whole room. The examiner worked through his list slowly. Did you make contact with any South Korean citizens alone? Did you hear any South Korean broadcasts? What thoughts did the South Korea trip give you? I answered the way I'd been trained. It reaffirmed our superiority in every way. My face didn't flicker. It had been hardened over nearly 20 years. The examiner studied me for a long moment, then nodded. Passed. But Kyung's session ran long. I sat in the hallway, squeezing my hands together. Please, don't say anything. Not a word. 3 days after the interrogations ended, a dancer named Hyerian wasn't at practice. Not in the rehearsal room. Not in the dorms. Not at meals. At first I thought she was sick. Then another day passed. And another. Nobody asked where she'd gone. We all knew better than to ask. When someone disappeared, you let them disappear. You moved on like they'd never existed. That was how you survived in North Korea. Within days, another dancer filled her spot as if she'd always been there. Later, Kyung told me what Hyerian had said during her interrogation. The South Korean television programs were more entertaining than I expected. That was it. Nothing more. She said the TV was interesting and she was gone. That night I couldn't sleep. Everything I'd been taught was crumbling. They told us we lived in the happiest nation on earth. But a country where one sentence about TV can make a person vanish, that's not happiness. I stared at the ceiling for hours. I still don't know what happened to Hyerian. The following spring, my father collapsed. A long illness, suddenly worse. I rushed to him the moment I heard. He was lying under his blankets, thin in a way that frightened me. You might think party official father. A daughter whose team director, surely medicine wouldn't be a problem. It was. The doctor wrote a prescription. The pharmacy had empty shelves. The pharmacist apologized. Nothing's been coming in lately. This was a pharmacy in central Pyongyang. A family with double rations couldn't find a single packet of medicine. If you're South Korean, you remember how scarce medicine was right after the Korean War. North Korea in the 2000s was still living that era. I went from market to market. Called in every connection I had, spent foreign currency I'd scraped together. By the time the medicine came, it was too late. My father didn't survive that summer. At his bedside, he took my hand. Weak, but his grip held firm. He opened his mouth slowly. Seonhwa, just stay well. Not eat well. Not be happy. Just stay well. Such a small thing to ask. I didn't understand the full weight of it then. I would later. Through the entire funeral, I refused to cry. The director can't show weakness. I held it together in front of the mourners, in front of my colleagues. 3 full days. The last night. After everyone had left and the house went quiet, Sunhee slipped in and sat beside me, didn't say a word, just took my hand and stayed. My youngest student, a girl I'd found and raised myself. And when she sat there like that, that's when the tears finally came. Once they started, they wouldn't stop. When it was over and the crying was done, my head felt clear. Clear enough for one thought to surface sharp and unmistakable. I can't keep living like this. My father's last words were, stay well. Whether staying well was even possible here, that had become the question. It was spring 2006. Preparations for the second South Korea trip were in full swing. Daily rehearsals. I was overseeing everything as director. Of course I assumed I'd be on the roster. The thought of being left off never crossed my mind. 20 years I'd given to this. I walked into the office to check the candidate list. The official wouldn't look at me. He kept his eyes on his papers. Comrade Lee Seon-hwa will not be participating in this event. I didn't understand at first. Excuse me? He still wouldn't meet my eyes. Your father's ideological record has been flagged for re-examination. My father had been dead less than a year. The room went still around me. In North Korea, that phrase means exactly one thing. The reason doesn't matter. It means you're out. I didn't say a word. Just bowed my head. Understood. My legs shook in the hallway. I leaned against the wall. 20 years. From 15 to 35. 20 years, and it ended in an instant because of a dead man's name. That night I went into Minji's room and watched her sleep. She was 13, almost the same age I'd been when I first entered the Corps. Her face so peaceful. Looking at her, my chest ached. This child had no idea what was coming for her. That was when I decided. She would not live the way I had. 20 years of service, then cut in a moment over a dead father's name. I would not hand that life to my daughter. When she turned 15, I would not let her world be one she had to survive by passing a foot odor inspection. I would find another way, even if it killed me. The next day, I pulled Myung-chol aside, an alley near the black market. People passed by, but as long as we kept our voices low, we were fine. He listened without interrupting. When I finished, there was a long silence. He looked around once, then low and even when. The sooner the better. He nodded. 2 sentences. Done. Quiet people are more trustworthy than talkers, that much I'd always known. Myung-chol moved immediately. Through black market connections, he reached a broker. He came back with information about the Tumen River crossing route. I told Young myself. She looked at my face and said before I could explain anything, "When do we leave?" No convincing necessary. She'd already decided probably long before I came to her. Ever since her husband had been taken by state security, she'd been a different person. Sunhee was harder. She was still young. My student. Her face went white when I told her. She sat there a long time, then started crying. Silent tears. I waited. Finally, she raised her head. "Teacher, don't leave me behind." "I won't. We're going together." 2 gold rings. A hidden stash of dollars. That was everything I had. 3 days before we left, I went to my father's grave. A small mound on a hillside outside Pyongyang. I went alone without telling anyone. 2 bus transfers and a long walk. Weeds had grown thick over the path. When I reached his grave, new grass was pushing through. Spring? He was down there and spring was coming up here without him. I crouched in front of the grave and stayed a long time. No idea what to say. Too much to say and nothing came. Finally, I got a few words out. "Father, I'm going. Forgive me. I have to get Minji out." That was it. Nothing more would come. I stood up. On the way down, I turned and looked back. A small mound on a hill. I bowed once more, then turned away. I never told my mother. The morning we left, I stopped by her place. We had tea. When I stood to go, I said, "I'll be back in a few days." She called after me as I turned to leave. "Sonhua." I stopped. Couldn't turn around. If I turned, I wouldn't be able to go. I just stood there. "Are you eating?" "Yes." "Eating well." Then I walked fast. As soon as I turned the corner, I was running. Running so she wouldn't see me fall apart. That question, "Are you eating?" became the last words my mother ever said to me. The most ordinary question in the world. Her voice is still with me. Sometimes it comes at the edge of sleep. That low, warm voice of hers asking if I'm eating. I want to answer her even now. "Yes, Mom. I'm eating well." Minji, too. December 2006, the broker's date arrived. The Tumen River freezes hardest in winter, that was why. The 5 of us traveled to the area near Huryong in separate groups over several days. Too conspicuous to move together, I brought Minji and pretended we were visiting relatives. On the train, she asked, "Mom, where are we going?" I said, "I'll tell you soon." She didn't ask again. She was already growing up fast, that girl. Myung-chol had gone ahead to scout. He sent word to a rendezvous point, a rundown warehouse on the outskirts of Huryong. When we gathered there in the dark, all 5 of us, nobody spoke. Ong-kyung came in. Sunhee came in. Myung-chol closed the door. 5 people sitting in the dark. Silence. What was there to say? Our eyes told each other everything. There was no going back. None of us knew what came next. Minji pressed herself against my side. 13 years old, how frightened she must have been. Not a word from her. Just her hand locked around mine. The temperature of those fingers, I still feel it. Cold to the touch, but warm somehow. Strange thing to say. Cold hands, and yet warmth. 200 a.m. The broker signaled. We filed out of the warehouse in a line. The wind hit our faces the moment the door opened. It cut like a blade. Maybe 4 degrees below 0 Fahrenheit. Every breath came out white. I worried it might be visible from far away. I told Minji to keep her scarf wrapped over her mouth. We moved slowly, no footsteps. The broker out front, Myung-chol watching the rear. The path down to the riverbank was steep and icy. Sunhee's foot slipped. Myung-chol caught her from behind without a sound. At the river's edge, the Tumen was frozen solid. White ice under a pale moon. Wide. You might cross a river all your life and think nothing of it. This one was different. The far bank was another country. A river where you could live or die. The broker tested the ice with his foot, then waved us forward. Myung-chol stepped out first. Then Young-kyung. Then Sunhee. Then Minji and me. Every step made a cracking sound sharp enough that my heart stopped each time. Try to imagine that. A silent winter night, 2 a.m., and every footfall cracking through the stillness. I held my breath with each step. One. Then another. Young-kyung's lips were moving. No sound. She was praying. Halfway across, a light moved on the far bank. A flashlight. Border guards. Myung-chol down. 5 bodies hit the ice at once. The cold against my face was savage. I pressed my cheek to it and didn't breathe. I pushed Minji's head flat against the ice and covered her mouth with both hands. She was trembling, her whole body shaking uncontrollably. I was shaking too, but I couldn't let her see it. If I came apart, she would too. The beam swept slowly toward us. 1 second felt like a year. I shut my eyes. I don't know if God exists or doesn't, but something in me prayed. Please, not her. Take me if you have to. Just let her live. Then the light turned away. That moment I still carry it. The release when the beam swung in the other direction. Every muscle went slack at once. I nearly dropped flat, but we were still on the ice. My Myung-chul whispered, "Go." We ran. Knew we shouldn't run, feet moved anyway. After everything the cheerleading corps put me through, I thought I'd seen hard training. Running across that ice holding Minji's hand was a different universe. My legs had nothing left. My knees stopped obeying me. But every time her hand was in mine, somehow I moved. When we stepped onto the Chinese bank, Sun-hee sat down, crying without a sound, shoulders heaving. Eun-kyung pressed a hand over her mouth and bent her head. My Myung-chul looked back toward the river, then looked up at the sky. Not a word. Just that. I pulled Minji into my arms. She held on. Nothing to say. We just stayed like that. We'd crossed, alive, and yet I didn't feel joy. I looked back across the river, into that darkness. My mother was somewhere in there, still waiting for a daughter who'd said she'd be back in a few days. And somewhere in a hillside grave, my father was there too. My Myung-chul came to me quietly. "Let's go." One more look north. Then I turned. That was my last goodbye to home. The first night in China, I thought I was free. I was wrong. The broker brought us to a rundown farmhouse on the edge of a Korean-Chinese village. 5 people in one room, 2 blankets, windows covered with thick cloth, no lights without permission. He left us with a single sentence: "Don't go outside. If you're caught, I don't know you." The door closed. In that moment, I understood this wasn't freedom. We traded one cage for another. Back in Pyongyang, the system locked us in. Here, it was our existence itself. We were people who weren't supposed to be here. No papers, no names, no right to breathe in this place. If the Chinese authorities caught a defector, it meant immediate repatriation. You know what repatriation meant. No one sent back across that river came back intact, so we kept perfectly still. Couldn't even glance out the window during daylight. A footstep outside, everyone's heart dropped. A dog barking, every face turned to the door all at once, dozens of times a day. The first day, no one ate. The second day, nothing either. Hunger without any way out, we simply sat with it. On the third evening, the elderly Korean-Chinese woman who owned the farmhouse knocked on our door. She slid a bowl of food through the gap. Corn rice and kimchi. Sunny took 1 spoonful and burst into tears. "Why are you crying?" I asked. "It's just warm," she said. Warm rice was enough to break her. That one word told the whole story of how tightly we'd been wound. Myung-chul ate in total silence. Eun-kyung held her bowl and just stared down at it for a long time, like eating it too fast would waste something. After the woman left, I stared in the direction she'd walked. She hadn't asked a single question, just fed us because we were the same people. Not north or south. Just human. I had no words for that kind of grace. About 10 days in, a missionary couple came. From South Korea. A pastor and his wife. They walked in, looked us over once and said, "You've been through so much." Nothing else. No, "Where are you from? Why did you come? Do you have family?" They simply led us to their safe house. A real room. Blankets. A bathroom. A door with a lock. That lock felt strange. Being the one on the inside. Turning it myself, I didn't know how to feel about that. The pastor's wife made dinner. There was seaweed soup on the table. The smell hit me and my mother came flooding back. The soup she made every birthday. Up before dawn to soak the seaweed, fry it in sesame oil, then simmer it all morning. 1 spoonful and my eyes filled before I could stop them. The pastor's wife sat beside me without a word and rubbed my back. Myung-chul said, over his bowl, "I think I might actually live." I'd never been so glad to hear 3 words, but the fear didn't leave. Word spread that there were informants in the Korean Chinese, villages, people selling defectors' locations to the authorities for a few dollars. A family nearby had been taken in the night, we heard. A child had been crying and nobody could do anything. That night I found Sun-hee sitting in the corner of the room, arms wrapped around her knees. I went and sat beside her. A long silence. Then she asked, voice barely above a breath, "Teacher, do you think we'll really make it to Korea?" Honestly, I didn't know. There was nothing I could guarantee. Tomorrow morning, that door might open with officers on the other side. But I said, yes, we'll make it. And I prayed from the deepest part of myself that it wasn't a lie. One afternoon, I found Minji sitting close beside the pastor's wife, writing something in a notebook. Chinese. She was copying down Chinese words, one by one, sounding them out. Her pronunciation was rough, but she was working. The pastor's wife corrected her. She repeated it, wrote it again. A few days later, the pastor needed someone to run an errand. Minji came to me and said, "Mom, I'll translate." 13 years old, not even 3 weeks in China. Something made me laugh, a real laugh, coming up before I could stop it. The first laugh in a long time. Kyung looked up from across the room. Myungchul too, Sunhee. And one by one, watching me, their faces softened. That's what laughter does. One person laughs and the people beside them can't help it. Back in North Korea, the laughter we learned wasn't like that. But in that little room, for the first time, it happened on its own. Nobody told us to. That laughter was exactly what we needed. It was where the will to survive came from. 3 months in China. Then the pastor pulled me aside. The security sweeps are getting worse around here. It's no longer safe to stay. Short words. Clear meaning. Time to move. That night, the 5 of us sat together. Ma Young-chul had gathered the intelligence. Going directly to the Korean embassy in Beijing was out. The area was under constant surveillance. But if we went through Myanmar into Thailand, there was a Korean embassy in Bangkok. And Thailand didn't repatriate North Korean defectors. He finished explaining and added, "It won't be easy. But there's no other way." No one argued. We all knew there wasn't. The pastor held each of our hands before we left. No words. Just that. The warmth of his grip stayed with me for a long time. A benefactor doesn't have to speak. Sometimes all it takes is holding someone's hand. The Myanmar crossing was rougher than anything I'd imagined. Mountain trails. No real path. We followed a local guide through jungle that baked during the day and turned cold at night without warning. The body that had endured 4 below winds on the Tumen River was now threatening to collapse in tropical heat. Funny thing, the human body cold nearly kills you, and so does heat. The next afternoon, Sunhee went down first. A cramp in her leg, she couldn't take another step. Her face had gone the color of earth. Before I could think of what to do, Myungchul was already moving. He crouched in front of her and offered his back. "Get on." One word. That was all. Some people are like that, quiet, while their body's already doing what needs to be done. He carried her. Sweat poured off him. He didn't stop. The next day, Minji hit the wall. Her face went pale. Her steps slowed, then stopped. I crouched down in front of her the way Myungchul had for Sunhee. "Get on." "Mom, I'm too heavy." "No, you're not." A lie. She was heavy. My legs were giving out, but the moment her warmth was on my back, somehow my feet kept moving. Maybe that's what it means to be a mother. Your body says it's done, but your child's weight says otherwise. Kyung fell back to walk alongside me, took my bag without a word. I said I was fine. She didn't even look up. Just carried it. That's how we dragged each other through the jungle. When we crossed into Thailand, everyone sat down. No one said anything, too exhausted to speak. Sunhee pulled off her shoes. The blisters had burst on both feet. Kyung's palms were scraped and dried, with blood from grabbing branches on the trail. Minji laid her head on my lap. I stroked her hair. That she had to go through this, the thought was a physical pain. But she was alive. We were all alive. We'd made it this far. Bangkok was still days away. Moving with our guide, Minji said to me at one point, "Mom, the trees are different here." I knew what she meant. In North Korea's winter mountains, the trees are stripped bare, cut down for firewood. But here in January, the trees were full and green. She must have thought it was strange. I just said, "Yeah, different." Looking at those trees, something settled in me. This is what the world is supposed to look like. We reached Bangkok 14 days after leaving China. Our bodies were wrecked, clothes ruined with sweat and mud, shoe soles worn through. But we walked all the way to the street where the South Korean embassy stood. Then I saw it. The South Korean flag catching the wind, moving slowly back and forth. My feet stopped. I looked back. Kyung had stopped. Sunhee, Myungchul. Nobody moved. Have you ever cried looking at a flag? That was my first time. It wasn't even my country's flag. But at that moment, it was the most beautiful thing in the world. Minji ran first. "Mom, that's it." She was already sprinting. Watching her go, it finally became real. We made it. At the embassy gate, I fell to my knees. "Please help us." Those were the only words I had. A staff member ran out and helped me up. "Come inside." "It's all right," and those words came out in Korean. Soft, warm Korean. My knees gave out again. Ma Young-chul walked through the embassy doors and said in a clear, steady voice, "I want to become a citizen of the Republic of Korea." The staff paused for a moment, then smiled. That warm, real smile. Myung-chul said it and started crying. That stone-faced man, tears running down without a sound. Watching him, I fell apart all over again. The longing behind that one sentence, we'd been carrying it so long. But that evening, news hit us like a thunderclap. Chinese authorities had tracked our route and filed a report. One day later, and we would have been caught at the Thai border. One day. Young-kyung looked up at the ceiling and said, "Someone was watching over us." I nodded. My father, I thought. The father I'd left behind on that hillside outside Pyongyang. And Mom, too, still waiting for a daughter who said she'd be back in a few days. We were alive. Finally, truly alive. A highway rest stop. Somewhere on the expressway heading south. Not long after arriving in South Korea, our caseworker from the Government Resettlement Center was taking us for a drive, and she pulled in for a stop. As the bus turned into the entrance, something collapsed inside my chest. This was the place. The bus heading toward Daegu, sitting next to a monitor with my face locked down, jaw clenched, not letting a single expression escape, watching the world through glass. This time I just stepped off. Nobody stopped me. I pushed through the rest stop doors. Warm air rolled out with the smell of food, dozens of dishes, people talking and laughing freely, no one having asked their permission to smile. A young mother helping her kid pick out a snack. College students with their arms around each other eating noodles. An old man sitting alone on a bench with his coffee. The scene I'd watched through glass 4 years. Ego now unfolding 3 feet in front of me. No monitor this time. No expression to manage. No holding anything back. My vision went white. The next thing I remember was a ceiling. Minji's voice. "Mom, Mom." The caseworker. "Are you okay?" I had collapsed on the floor. When I came back, my first words were, Is this really the South?" She told me later, "Everything you'd been holding in came out at once." She was right. Everything clenched on that bus in 2003. Everything swallowed on the Tumen River ice. Every step bitten through in the jungle. It all broke loose in that one moment. My body knew before I did it's safe now. I remember the spring I first landed at Incheon Airport. Coming down the steps, the moment my feet touched the ground, I stopped. Couldn't take another step. Just stood there. Behind me, Minji said, "Mom, what's wrong?" I said, "Nothing." But it wasn't nothing. Because of that spring, this life exists. Because I took that step, I'm standing here now. I'm doing well now. I've been coaching a cheerleading team for over 10 years. Being a former North Korean cheerleading team director, something that marked me over there, turned out to be an asset here. I've been teaching children how to smile, and in doing that, I've learned something too. You can't teach someone to smile. You just feel joy and it comes. Young-kyung performs with a soul orchestra now, the woman who carried a violin case across a frozen river. Myung-chul became a broadcast sound. Director, and whenever our team performs, he runs our audio. Sunhee works as a K-pop dance trainer. The 4 of us each in our own place, each living our own life. Minji is 32 now. The girl who pressed herself flat against the ice on the Tumen River. Her mouth covered by my hands, she's grown into someone who holds mine. The hand that held mine while she cried in front of the Milan Olympics. I know what freedom is now. It's not expensive food. Not a big house. It's being able to say I miss you to someone you miss. Being able to say I'm hurting when you hurt. Being able to cry without watching for judgment. That's what freedom is. Mom, 20 years. 20 years since I said I'll be back in a few days and walked out the door. Your voice is still there. Are you eating? At the time, I hated hearing it and walked faster. Now I'd give anything to hear it again. Just that one question, just once more in that low, warm voice of yours. Mom, I'm eating well. Minji, too. She smiles so much now. You'd love seeing her. When the 2 Koreas are united, I'll come running. I want to sit with you and share a meal. Nothing fancy. Just warm rice. Your seaweed soup would be even better. I'm waiting for that day. Today and every day.